All right, welcome everybody. It is Monday and it is an expert interview day. And today, do we have a guest for you? Yes, in between all the moving around and all the shifting that we're doing over here at Dave Cooper Live, we have secured Colby Swanson for today. But however, before we get started, at Dave Cooper, we are bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems to building science to building codes to just building it better using the best technology out there. And that is why today is so special having Colby Swanson on today, because Colby, in his rightful mind, is an innovation strategist and a construction technologist. And he's been on this show before. Not only is that, he's heading up the MMC, the Modular Mobilization Coalition, but we're not talking about that today. We're going to talk about where this industry is heading, where we're at right now, and what does 2021 look like. So let's welcome Colby to the show. Colby Swanson, what's happening, my friend?
How you doing, man? You're busy. You're all over the country, moving the family.
Yeah, it's well, it's crazy time, but it's kind of like a lobster that outgrows its shell. It's painful while it's going through it, but then you become a bigger lobster, right? So,
there you go.
Gotta love growing our shell.
Yeah, you're like everybody this year, right? We just kind of want to get through with this shed 2020 and get on to 2021, don't we?
We do. We do. But I have to say, out of bad things, good things come as well. And I am thinking for our industry, it has made people slow up, spend more time researching, taking a look at what's out there on how we can do it better. And I think, there's a value in what has happened for the industry overall. And I think maybe we're going to hit on some of those things today. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's lessons in the chaos.
I love it. There is lessons in the chaos. Jen, if you're listening, that is a new t-shirt. It's a t-shirt day. All right, Colby. So why don't you take 2 minutes? And for those of the people out there watching this that do not know who you are, why don't you give us a little brief overview, elevator pitch? We want to know everything from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. And don't leave out the good, gory stuff from the hospital, right?
All right. Well, I will leave that part out. Yeah. So, lifelong construction sort of innovation guy. Started off framing houses in college, and out of college started a company with a friend of mine and grew that really into the largest energy efficiency Energy Star homes provider in the U.S. But kind of outgrew that and moved into the building science arena and spent about 7-8 years doing class action litigation on building forensics. So fixing other people's mistakes. But after 8 years of that and seeing the same problems over and over again, I really wanted to get ahead of the problems and try and help people solve the issues before they got into it. So I moved into industry. I started working for BASF, writing strategies around how we could disrupt the construction industry. And for the last, I left BASF 7-8 years ago, and I've been an innovation consultant. With the most recent development, this Modular Mobilization Coalition, which has been a fantastic sort of new endeavor and exciting in a lot of ways, but we could talk about that. I think we've got that on the calendar for next year.
We do. We're due for an MMC update. That's something that has come out of COVID. So that kind of ties back to what I said in the opening statement. Good things have come out of this. There's been a lot of collaboration that has come out of this. There are companies looking, such as the MMC, at doing things differently and in a better way. And I think this is part of today's conversation. I think it's going to be a good wrap to our panel conversation for this year between you and I. So why don't we hop into it? Why don't we hop into it? And you tell us, where do you think we are today with everything? Like, so how would you define 2020 from Colby Swanson's words?
It's been a year of stress, right? And stress, I think, is a healthy thing if you manage it, of course. We've stressed our political system, our healthcare system, the economic system, social systems, social norms. And of course, the construction industry has been part of that sort of stress. But it's in that stress that I think a lot of really great new opportunities have come to fruition. Like you were saying, the collaborative efforts. We've seen a renewed focus in the modular industry. It's continued to strengthen. I think there's still money flowing into the industry, meaning that investors are still very interested, and it's money coming from places that maybe aren't the old sort of construction mindset, which brings new perspectives. And that's really important when we talk about 2021 and the changes that I see coming. So, yeah, I think it's been a year of stress. But like I say, I think when we stress ourselves is when we really start to learn what we're made of and where we're weak and where we can sort of improve ourselves. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially, listen, an industry that is male dominated still, right? We need more women in this industry, more Dana Spains of the world and so forth, right? And most people don't like change, especially when you have an industry of old people like us, right? And so that's part of it, right? The pain is part of it. The stress is part of it. And that's what's causing the strain and some of the things happening. So, and I agree with you. I think that the technology, the newer players coming on the market, some forward-thinking individuals such as yourself, Von Buckley, and others that are out there that are thinking a little bit differently to change the way we build and how we do it, is what's going to take us into 2020, to 2021. But before we get there, where are we right now? Are we still as busy as we've ever been, or are you seeing some changes out there with the manufacturing facilities and what's going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first half of 2020 probably didn't look very different for a lot of the construction industry because, there's just so much inertia in our industry. When a project gets going, it's really, really tough to stop it. But the second half, and especially in this fourth quarter, we're starting to see some of the decisions based on COVID hitting in the early part of the year for real estate folks to basically pump the brakes on projects. And so projects that maybe were in the queue got delayed or funding fell through. And so that's starting to hit the books, and that's starting to hit the operations of builders, contractors. And that's why we're seeing some people, like prominent names, fold or have to really slow down or look for new ways to keep their business alive. At the same time, and this is a really sort of interesting thing about this, we're still seeing investments. I mean, I think it was last month we saw Google, put another $20 million into Factory OS. Prescient got some funding this year. Project Frog has gotten funding. So we're seeing, this really this kind of like diametrically opposing situation going on. On one hand, we're seeing failures, but on the other hand, we're seeing the industry still very robust and a lot of optimism, such that money is still being invested into the industry. So I think it's that kind of middle place, that gray area of sort of instability, where there's a ton of possibility, just a lot of possibility. And technology, I think, is going to be that's going to be one of the big plays for generations to come, is the digital movement for the construction industry.
Sure. Well, with the ebb and flow that we see in the construction industry, the ups and downs, the market crashes, the slowdowns, how is a company to manage that? That's what's really hard about what we do, especially from a manufacturing side of it. If I think back to my days in just the offsite modular manufacturing side of this, there was always this line that a manufacturer would walk. Do we stay residential, single family, or do we go commercial because of the ebb and flow of what's happening? What are you guys seeing, just from the manufacturing standpoint on that? Because you're right. Some people are closing their doors, or they're closing up shop until 2021, until they see the projects begin. What does one do to get past that?
Well, so let me just give you kind of like the high level of what I'm seeing out there. So on the residential side of the business, things are actually looking really strong. A lot of the residential players, and when I say residential, I'm talking single family residential, is their backlog at a lot of these factories is increasing, and it's been increasing all year. So they have not really seen the impact of COVID to the extent that we'll call it the commercial side of the business, the multifamily, hospitality, dorms, retail stores, that type of business in the modular sense has really started to take the hit. And you're seeing factories that they're basically developing holes in their production because a project drops out of their schedule, and suddenly they've got a 2-month hole, and they're scrambling. And it's you take a 200,000 square foot facility with 150, 200 people in it, and all of a sudden you say, hey, we don't have a project for the next 2 months. That's from a cash position, that's a stressful situation. And so I think that's the struggle is on that commercial side. What some of those guys are doing is they're trying to diversify their client base, right? And it's really hard when you're a factory. If you're set up to build single family, that's a different setup in the factory with different skill sets, a different supply chain than if you're building, multifamily product.
Yeah.
And, I think maybe people think that that's all the same thing, and a box is a box, and, how different can it really be? It's actually, there's more differences than at least enough differences in a business sense that you can't just flip flop from building single family one day and multifamily the next. It's not to say we can't do it. It's just the industry hasn't gotten quite sophisticated enough on the digital front to be able to make that shift easily. So yeah, how do you solve that? If right now, let's talk about the commercial side where the multifamily, how do you solve that? You have to figure out either how to make your factory production more flexible so that you can build different things and just at a turn of a switch, hey, we're going to throw a different product on. Or you learn how to share and you find projects more easily in the world of construction, because there's still projects out there that need to be built. It's just, is your name out there, and do people know that you've got this, hey, I've got a hole in my production line in February and March of 2021, and my existing client base doesn't have anything. I've got to get that out there. So that's a real tough thing to do, and that's part of what we're trying to do at MMC, but is aggregate the supply, the demand side of the business, and provide some more stability in the marketplace. So when you do lose a project, there's something to backfill.
Well, all right. So, there's a lot to touch base on there, right? So you get into the point where these factories have to furlough their workers for a couple months. Then you get to the point where, you hear, well, they make more money just sitting at home. Will they come back to work? Is the other problem. And now you keep running into the skilled labor after you've already changed them issue. So with the ebb and flow, residential is up and then it's down. Commercial is up, then it's down. It kind of goes both ways. What about companies that are vertically integrating, that they have their own jobs, but they also have infill of outside jobs? Is that something that you see moving forward in offsite construction in general? I don't care whether it's CLT or panelization or modular.
Yeah, I think the vertical integrated model is what is the model of 2020. A lot of your factories that came into to being in 2020 or 2019, they were using a vertically integrated model back to the developer. So they were building their own products. And Katerra really kicked that off years ago. Katerra was developing for Wolf, their development arm.
Right.
And I think that model makes sense, but it's not like that's the end all be all. What has to, and this is where we talk about diversifying your client base. If your only client is yourself, it doesn't mean you're prone or you're not prone to a project falling out of the production schedule, or a delay because of financing fell through. So it really does still require that ability to backfill when a project fails. And I don't care if you're vertically integrated, all you do is if you're just a manufacturer, having that capability is really, really important. And what you backfill with is also really important, because if it's something you've never built before and it's complicated, then you're just asking for problems, right? We've all done those projects where, oh God, we have to put something on the line. And next thing you know, you're going, man, I wish we would have thought that through.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, listen, that's like a young builder, which I was at one point in my life. and then all of a sudden taking on commercial or multifamily jobs and thinking you have it figured out, even though you were doing modular. It was an expensive lesson.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, education costs money.
It does, and if you look at it as an investment, right, is that failure was an investment. And then if you actually get a return out of that investment is what's important.
Right.
So you learn something from that. Did you carry that forward into the next project? And I don't see enough of that going on in our industry. And it's not because we can't do it. It's sort of like we have this tribalism where all of the knowledge and the wisdom is kind of all locked up here. And we don't have it in a digital, easy to transfer that knowledge medium. It's all like, oh, you got to call this guy because he's done that before. Yeah. I mean, like we've been operating that way for far too long. And our industry has got to digitize in order to solve some of these problems that we're talking about.
All right. So this brings up kind of an interesting subject. I had a call not too long ago with another manufacturing facility owner. And I said, well, what are you doing to increase your innovation in the manufacturer, on the manufacturing floor? And the answer was, well, we're so busy, we can't stop our lines. Okay. Yeah. Well, and when you do stop your lines, well, now we're in let's save the cash mode because we don't know how long this is going to last. And it's a double-edged sword, but we are seeing companies out there and consultants out there now that are coming up with solutions to infill pieces of the line to double production or double capacity of a certain part of the line. What are you seeing out there? Because you talk about digital twin, that's build it twice in the virtual world and build it once, measure twice, cut once, as you said before the show. Walk us through this.
Yeah. So, well, like a digital twin, let me just kind of give a quick, simple, high-level overview of what that is in case folks haven't heard you use that term before. But it's simply a virtual model of a process, product, or service that enables the pairing of virtual and physical worlds. So it's useful in the analysis of data and monitoring of systems to mitigate costly or expensive disruptions before they happen. So it's really meant to be a business management tool that allows you to sort of make smarter decisions using this sort of video game. Let's for example, like you could have a model, a digital twin of your factory, and it could have the exact layout of your factory with all the different processes laid out and the number of people that you have working at each station, the inflow of inputs, so raw materials, what you're doing at each station. All that can be built in a virtual world. And then you can start to manipulate that virtual world and make decisions and say, hey, what if we took station 18 and moved it up to station 2? What if we invested in the semi-automated or fully automated wall manufacturing line? Mm-hmm. And it will now run that scenario for you and tell you what the theoretical throughput difference would be.
Right.
And so it's really just it's a really good tool to help you make smarter decisions that, quite frankly, we don't have that developed yet. I'm working on a project right now where we are funded by the Department of Energy to build a digital twin of a factory that can be used by any factory, because the parts, we talked earlier about how factories are different.
Right.
How you build, the general methodologies that you build, it's pretty much the same. You build a floor, you build walls, you assemble those walls on the floor, and then you do all that finishing work. You put the lid on it, you put drywall on it, you trim it, you paint it, you do all the things that we do in buildings. Now the supplies, the materials, the raw materials we use change. How we build our walls and what we build them out of can be different, and that's where things really start to change. But the general processes are typically pretty similar. So if we build this digital twin in such a way that those processes can be easily just grabbed from a library and be like, oh, I build wood framed walls. Well, here's the library that has the wood frame wall station. Plug that into your factory digital twin, and then grab, how do you build your floors? We build them using TJIs. Okay, plug that into now you build this model of your factory, and then you can start planning and running scenarios.
Well, all right. So We got some people in the audience, some of which I'm sure Joel Hutchins.
No. Hey, Joel.
We got some comments out there, but he does say, digitize to industrialize. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And Joel has another question, and I'll get to it in a moment. But you're absolutely right. So digitizing, how we're running our production facilities is step one. What is the software we're using for that? You mentioned that, all right, where we're working on building something out for the DOE. Outstanding. Is that using BIM software? Is that using other software? So how does one actually build the kit of parts out virtually, right? Because that's what this is, a kit of parts for manufacturing facilities. So you can duplicate those align floors wherever you're at, but then you can, like you said, you can plug and play. Say, all right, well, what if we put, framing at the beginning of the line versus flooring at the beginning of the line, or what have you? Does it make an impact on our production speed, capabilities, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so the analogy of like kit of parts, which is more focused on what we build, not the process of how we build, but hey, how do you build the bathroom and what are all the parts that kit out a bathroom or a kitchen or a floor? In the digital twin world, the library is a little different. It's more process oriented. So it's the process that you use to build the bathroom and the materials that you use. And you can build a library of that as well. So it's not so much it's partially like a kit of parts, but in a process mode. And so we don't use BIM, we don't use Revit. The software we're actually using is called Unity. And it's a gaming software that allows you to create sort of this like virtual world that if you maybe had never seen a factory before, we can build it really realistic that you might be thinking you're looking at an actual factory. Right? People walking around, they're swinging a hammer, things are moving, cranes are moving, and you're like, wow, okay, this is how a factory works. That's built in gaming software.
That sounds like Minecraft, right? Is that Minecraft?
Yeah, it's more like Minecraft. Now we can plug in as an input to stuff like what Joel's working on, where if we can then connect the raw materials and what we're building. So now it's not just the process of how we build, but what we're building. And you merge those two technologies. So kit apart technology with digital twin technology. Digital twin also can be you can build a model of the building, right? And that's what a Revit model is you see the building in a 3D rendering. So if we could, we're not quite to that level of sophistication where we can merge the kit of parts, the BIM model right into our factory digital twin, but we're not far from it. It's not that we can't do it. It's just that there's not enough money and resources being put into the research side, which, you hit on this point earlier. I'm at my factory and you ask them, hey, what are you guys doing to innovate? Well, I can't right now. Like I'm stressed out because I don't know where we're going to get our next project. And then you ask them when times were great, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and they're like, I'm too busy. I'm just trying to, make money. Well, when are we going to do this, guys? And this is the same argument in the job site. Like if you go to a stick-built, builder and ask them the same thing. When times are great, they're busy. When times are not so great, we don't have any money.
Yeah.
And I mean, so we got to break that cycle. And I think some of the innovative ways that we can do that is as an industry, collaborate more. Stop being so tribal and stop being and thinking that you've got something that's so special and unique that you can't share it with anybody else. Because the reality is until you get down to the molecular level, there's not a lot of, at least in the materials and the way we build, there's not a lot out there from an innovation standpoint.
No, there really isn't. And it's funny. I was just
or IP, I should say.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you just said that because I'm getting ready to pull up my personal banner that I love so much. And it is called, one second here. I'm scrolling. Here we go. Dave's Soapbox.
Oh, here we go. You've got a Dave Soapbox section.
I say it all the time. I mean, a lot of people watching know this already. We have to get out of our own way. At 3 to 5% of the market, depending on whether you're panelized, CLT, modular, but as a whole, if you have the solution, we wouldn't be 3 to 5% of the market. If you have something so innovative that's so mind-blowing, and some people out there are working on some great stuff, but from a manufacturing facility, staying confined, not wanting to collaborate, not wanting to work together as an industry, in my opinion, is the dumbest thing we can do, when we could all pull together and be, 30% of the market, 40% of the market, 90% of the market. Now that's some real numbers. And when we're 90% of the market, then I can understand if you don't want to share what you're doing with everybody. But right now, it makes no sense. That's my soapbox. I'm not going to go much further.
I think I'm going to jump on that soapbox for a second. I think we need to double down as an industry on a couple of things. We need to double down on digital sort of adoption. We have to do that, and that has to continue, and we've been doing that. We need to double down on collaborative efforts. We need to find ways to partner and to work with other formerly competitors to change the way we do things. Because as an industry, we have to get more effective at driving down cost. So let's double down on the digital thing, but we also got to double down on collaboration.
100%.
100%. There's some interesting collaborative things going on out there. MMC, the Modular Mobilization Coalition, is one. But in the research world, there's this ABC collaborative. It stands for Advanced Building Construction Collaborative. That is, it's being funded by DOE, and they're basically trying to bring together the offsite industry to share ideas and best practices to do exactly what you said, which is to take the industry from 3%, 30%, where we should be. And there's no reason. I mean, if you look at the industry and the structure of how we build and what we build, there is absolutely no reason that modular or offsite together can't be 40 to 50% of everything we build in the construction industry. It's 3%. It's 4% today in the modular world.
Right.
It's pathetic, to be honest. And it's hurting us. I mean, the resources that we waste in our people, in the materials, cutting down more trees than we need to cut down. And for God's sake, I mean, that's one of the lessons learned, I think, when I think about 2020 is climate change. I mean, I hope we learn something out of 2020 that's related to how fragile our climate is and how we humans are impacting it on a scale is staggering. I mean, remember when there were those pictures, like it was like the screen you have up of me and you split screen, but it was a split screen of like Paris. Right. And before, and it was all
after COVID
and after, and then they had one in India with and it was just like all of a sudden the people could see the Himalayan mountains. They've been living in, some city their whole life, 40 miles away from the Himalayas, and they've never seen the peaks. And we stopped driving around and doing our normal day-to-day business back in March and April, and they look up and they go, holy cow, the mountains are right there.
That's right.
The pollution went away.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, good things come out of this, but it's funny. You don't hear that all the time. I mean, that should be mainstream news to me, those types of conversations, especially for the younger generation, not so much for us older folk, but yeah, I agree. So let's hop into some comments real quick before we go into round two on some of these things here. Let's see what we got. So good old Joel does say good day, Dave and Colby. What's happening, Joel? We got Tim Sims from the Treehouse. Great to see you, Colby and Dave, warming up in the Treehouse today. Thanks for doing this session today. I'm wondering if you know any plants that would do tours right now, especially a CLT line. So let me jump on this one, if you don't mind, real quick, Colby, because listen, we've been actually having a lot of conversation on this channel with CLT manufacturers. And like everything else, people are pretty hesitant of letting people in. But Tim, we are starting this road show, and we do have access to these CLT plants that are coming up. So, if you want to talk about how we get access to that, or, he's with John Burns now, Colby. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. I knew he. Yep.
Yeah. So
congratulations on that, Tim.
But for sure. And Colby, you're big on the CLT, and you're talking to some people. Maybe some people as well.
Yeah. I mean, the CLT business is really starting to. It's still in its infancy. But it's booming. We've got to get more. We've got to get more sort of access, more awareness about what it is, and so getting into these factories is going to be important. Smart Lamb has a new factory in. I think it's in Arkansas, Dothan. Yeah, it's in Dothan. I can't remember what state that is down south.
Yep.
They just started that factory up in the middle of the crisis, and we were going to do a small little. Project where we were going to build a modular apartment out of some of their products. There's a factory in Oregon. It's called Freres, Freres, Freres Lumber, and they make what's called mass MPP, mass plywood panels. It's very similar to CLT. I mean, if you call them up and said, "Hey, I want to come look at your factory," they'd be happy to have you come in.
Yeah, I think, depending on what you're looking to do, right? I mean, I know even for us, Colby, with our tour coming up, and why I say that is, a lot of them, I mean, it's you got to go through the COVID test. They're just not going to let somebody come in and shut down their whole factory line. So that's just something to keep in mind if you guys are looking to do that. That's what we've been running into as we set this up. So now we have stuff in place to where we go through all these processes, which I'm not really looking forward to. That test sucks if they do the eyeball one.
Yeah, hopefully we're all going to be inoculated here in the next 3
I'm actually looking something up here too, because one of the things we had it on the show recently is Walmart has invested in Structurelam.
Yeah,
it's another big player, right? And they have a new manufacturing facility opening up as well. So there's a lot of great things going on with that, Tim. So I think, if you want to get into some of these plants, you can talk to myself, you can talk to Colby, we can see what we can help set up for you for sure. Tim's a great supporter, always has been.
Yeah, Tim's fantastic, and like we said, it's the more eyeballs and the more people that we can get into these facilities to understand the technology, so that they aren't scared of it or there's no mystery behind it. Like that dark room you're in. The less mystery, the more people are going to adopt it, right? I'm saying with technology, it's just kind of scary for a lot of people. They think, well, I don't know, I don't understand it, so I'm not willing to really learn about it. And that's
right. Yeah. Well, there's nothing scary about this room other than, we're traveling right now and it's a bedroom. So I love my way of making it look not like a bedroom.
Yeah. I like the little flag highlight there over your right shoulder. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Hey, God bless. That's my father-in-law's flag from his burial. So, you know what? Anytime we can support our troops and support the flag, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
100%. And it was there. And I said, you know what a great time. That's something, subliminally, those who know where I'm at would understand, well, that's pretty cool. So thanks for pointing it out. All right, moving on. Less about me, more about you, Colby, and the audience. Let's talk. All right, Joel, Colby, I'd love to hear what you think the major progressions the AEC industry has achieved in recent years.
Man, I think, Joel, this is a great question, because from my perspective, I feel like we have made progress, but we are still holding ourselves back. And BIM has made some really good strides to sort of, infiltrate a lot of architectural offices and get more people using Revit. That type of digital tool is really helpful on the front end. But that hasn't gotten nearly as deep into the industry as it needs to go. So past the architect, so getting into the factories and on the job sites where they have tools. I think it's just a slow process. When you're trying to change a $1.3 trillion industry, we're struggling. A good thing that I think has happened is we are seeing an increased interest from outside the industry. So players who are coming from the auto industry, coming from the software industry, are looking at what we're doing and saying, you know what, I want to get in that and try and do it and try and build buildings. And I've got a different approach. So I think that's been a real positive. I haven't seen a lot of material innovation, with the building materials that we use. That's been fairly stagnant for quite a while, I feel like. But yeah, I think the thing that I really want to see more of is more collaboration, doubling down on efforts for the industry to really work together, and doubling down on our digital adoption rates. So yeah, that's a great question, Joel. I got to think about that one and maybe write up a list of what do I think we've really done great as an industry over the last few years, because it's hard to point to something that stands out and everybody just goes, yeah, look at that. That's what we did. What is that for us, Dave? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah. I think some of the things that we're doing great right now is the conversations beginning. To me, that's one of the great things that's happening that hasn't happened in the past. We're trying to do a lot of that on this show, as you know. But like here, look in the background. You have Colby, you have Joel, you have some others people that we'll get to. We got Joe Butler. These are all people that and they tune in to talk. They tune in to listen. There's other manufacturers coming together. So if I were to think of one thing outside of, hey, this is the new greatest and latest tech, it would be the collaboration. The conversation is starting to happen because that's the first step for anything great really to happen. Unless you have that one disruptor that, like they did with taxi, right? Uber, come in and just blow the world up. I don't see that happening in the construction industry because I think there's too many pieces that are variable. But in our industry, things like Joel is doing, right, with Revia, and what other people are doing, like Joe Butler and Forward, Solutions Group, and what they're doing as far as trying to get people to think differently and innovate differently, and the amount of people that reach out, through us and this channel to connect with these people. I think that's step one to innovation happening. And I think that's one of the great things that's happening this year that has not happened in previous years.
Yeah, great point. I mean, you've sparked a dialogue, Dave. I mean, almost single-handedly, you've gotten a lot of ideas out there and a lot of people talking who haven't talked before. And so a ton of credit to you. I think another one that I just, while you were talking, it was, you guys, everybody knows about what happened in Canada like a few months ago when they announced $1 billion affordable housing push called the Rapid Housing Initiative. And they required, of that $1 billion, that $500 million of it had to be used to build affordable modular, right, off-site. It couldn't be the traditional stick built. I mean, that was a huge precedent that I want to use, and I think the government in the U.S. here should use as a launching point of what we could do as a policy side from federal municipalities to say, look, we need a renewed focus on affordable housing. Right. I mean, bankruptcies are at an all-time high. Renters defaulting on their rents are 2 to 3 times higher than they've ever been. People need more affordable housing. We need to build more affordably. One way to do that is to do sort of a Manhattan size, project where it's not, if it's $1 billion in Canada, the equivalent program here in the US is 10 billion.
Right. And
so now take 5 billion of that and say, okay, that has to be 5 billion in affordable housing built with modular. So if, the Biden administration is listening, which I hope they are, like, let's make that happen. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be modular. It can be, as long as it's off-site. Like because those are the technologies of the future,
right?
For how we build. Like, let's put something, and it doesn't take. Now we have a model. We have Canada's model. Let's do it here.
So
done it. Malaysia's done it. Other countries have done this. The U.S. is way behind here.
Well, here's the difference, right? People, especially in Canada and here, England. We had Mark Farmer on, Modernize or Die a few months back. And to me, it's like, all right, if we really want this change, if the government really wants this change, if it's better for the environment, if it saves money, why doesn't the government start using the offsite process? Lead the way, show people it's better. Show how you didn't spend $500 million over budget because you chose offsite, right? There's all these different variables. We were talking about this months ago with the VA and some of the things that they're doing. The Veterans Administration is looking at modular right now as a solution moving forward. And I think that, there's no way the government not today in today's state and current affairs, I don't think the government's going to mandate that, hey, this has to happen. They might. But I do think that the government can say, hey, we're going to start adopting these practices, and then, let's eat the pudding before you push the pudding, because they got a ton of projects. They're building all over the damn place. Why are they not doing it? That's what doesn't make sense to me. Too many union contracts, maybe. I don't know what it is.
Well, look, government is good for some things. And one thing the government is always is it's sort of like a referee, right? And if they put in rules that help the game and make the game more entertaining or make it more fair, then we need to put those rules in place. And the offsite industry has a bunch of obstacles and hurdles that we have to jump through that are needless, right? That are just in the way because, well, we just haven't done as good a job as lobbying the government. And so I think if the government gave us a chance, then we could do what we're talking about. We could go out and just show on a big scale how beneficial offsite industry is. So.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, here's a surprise for you. Listen, we have Dennis Steigerwalt hopped in down below. Nice. We're gonna bring Dennis in here in a second. Let's just get through a couple of these quick questions because I think this would be a good recap. Because Dennis was listed as one of the top influencers in offsite for this year. I don't know if you know that.
I saw that.
I know he's
weren't you too? You were on that list.
I was on that list, yes, which is cool, but it's going to take a hell of a lot more than 5 of us to influence what's going, or 6 of us were on the list, right? To influence what's happening in the world. So let's get a couple other things in here real quick, and then we'll bring Dennis in to talk about what the future of 2021 looks like. And then we'll be able to wrap it up. You still got a few minutes, Colby?
I do.
All right. Perfect. All right. So Joe Butler, Forward Solutions Group. What is happening, Joe? And Joe is a sponsor of ours for Wednesday show, and their group, him and Ben Hershey, they do wonderful things out there with consulting and helping people out in the industry, especially manufacturing facilities, optimize what they're doing. So thanks for joining us today, Joe. They're just great people. Do you know Joe Butler?
I do. Joe and I've talked, and Joe's got a lot of knowledge up there in Canada that we need to export down here to the States.
Come on, Joe. Bring it on, man.
I know he's doing.
Yeah. All right, we got Chris Roush. Looking forward to this one. Hey, Chris. And we are moving on. We got Al Tunisu. How are you? Dave. Always interested in good information and ideas. Love it. Holy
Chris
shit.
Roush, there's one to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
A gentleman who is, really studying the industry, really studying the past and understanding and embraces the sort of the future. It's super exciting to see guys like that. And Joe, I brought on a new guy at MMC, Michael Palmer. He just got his MBA. He's an architect, and they're all younger and they have these ideas, right? And they're different. And we need more of those ideas. Dennis has been thinking. Dennis comes from, he's not traditionally in this world. So, it's ideas like that these guys are bringing that are really, really important.
Yeah, 100%. I know Dennis is patiently waiting. Let's get through a couple more here. We got Chris Roush. Colby, what is the biggest challenge facing digital interchangeability across factories? How one file can be sent to any factory to produce the same product?
As we move into this digital age of construction, we're seeing the same sort of fragmentation that the industry already has. Is everybody's coming up with their own way of sharing information, and we don't have very good protocols on this stuff yet. And I think, Autodesk is really taken over the world in a lot of ways, and I think there's some pushback on that. At MMC, we're actually working together to try and, as a supply side, as factories, how can we share information better? And we're having dialogue about that. And, we don't have the answers, but that's a good place to go and study, well, what are the guys who run the factories and own the factories? What do they want? What do they need? And what are they willing to share amongst each other? Besides just sharing potential clients.
Yeah.
Sharing data and have a distributed manufacturing model. So what's the problem?
Imagine that.
And I didn't even come close to answering Chris's question, but what's the problem? I think this is another good one. To get all on the same, I don't know the answer to that. I'll be honest. This is another one. You guys are stumping me.
How one file can be sent to any factory to produce the same product. Well, here, let me chime in on my 2 cents on this. Then let me bring Dennis in too. I can see him. He's getting antsy. This guy, he doesn't like to wait around. He's got too much to do, I think. So let me just pop him in here and give him a hard time. Oh, he's not even centered. Dennis, get centered on the screen. What are you doing over there?
There we go. And I don't even have my great backdrop. This is it's not working out today, but hey.
You can add a green screen right through StreamYard. Give it a try. All right, so getting back to this real quick, Colby, this is some of the things that we've talked up. And why I brought Dennis in is one of my first conversations about this was at a Housing Innovation Alliance event in Baltimore, Maryland, a couple of years. I don't know how many years ago it was. And I was sitting there and I was talking with Steve Hundegger Steve Schrader from Hyundai. So, and we were talking about, we got a couple different issues, right? Because with a factory, why aren't we using 20 by 30 sheets of plywood versus 4 by 8, 4 by 10, 4 by 12, right? There's the whole manufacturing side of the raw materials. There's the digitization of that raw material that can talk to the machines that produce the raw materials, that can talk to the machines that can, on a production floor, put that into the lineup, right? There's a whole flow of digitization that rolls through. And maybe this doesn't get into Chris's question, but I think there has to be a bigger conversation from the raw material supply all the way through the manufacturing facility. And then to be able to take something like you were talking about earlier with the digital twin, right? With building this out, like what you're doing for the DOE, for how do you standardize some of this manufacturing process? So I think it's twofold. No, it's both the production floor and how do you share information, but we have to standardize the changes that are happening in the supply chain as well. Yeah, did I say that right?
What says Dennis? I want to hear Dennis's thoughts here.
Well, this is an area you guys are going to be far more inept to answer than I am. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface at the Housing Innovation Alliance on kind of looking at the complete digital landscape for these companies and how we can start to reinvent them and reimagine them. Let's say it differently, right? And this is a complicated beast, right? Because you're talking about a ton of technology platforms that have to work together in sync, and onboarding and adopting a new one requires a lot of changes to everything that's already in place. And I think so. You have the biggest issue is going to be getting into the legacy systems, right? So what's already there versus thinking ahead, and some of the work that you're doing, Colby, I know is like, what does the factory of the future look like, and how do we start to create that interconnectivity amongst them? And I like the idea that you mentioned, Dave, about the distributed manufacturing. I think this is something where we're starting to see it from some of the companies that are in our community, like Mighty Buildings, and looking at opportunities where they can do kind of manufacturing as a service, right? And some of the stuff that we've talked about, Colby, on other road trips that you participate in with us. So I think from that perspective, this is something that's our community is interested to hear more about. And I don't have a straight answer. What I'll do is I'm happy to go back to the guys in our network and the teams there and try to kind of continue to pull and extract that from them and kind of look at those roadmaps. But we did the same, you see with the BIM roadmap that we put together and those kind of tools and resources. There's not always just one answer. Oftentimes there isn't. And to your point, Dave, of standardization, that's the challenge. There isn't one answer, and everybody's going to go with what they think is best based off who sells it to them. That's right. And I think that can create some of the challenges as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's. I think you guys are making great points. There's not going to be a single program or software that answers this. It's because that's just not going to be a good end for anybody if that's what ends up happening. But at the same time, we need to be talking and collaborating to decide what are the protocols as an industry that we all can agree on how we exchange information and what that information should look like. We just need to have that basic conversation. And then the software guys can go develop everything they want to do in whatever tech and platform they want to develop it in, as long as the protocols are set, right? I mean, that's basically how the internet works, is like there's a basic set of protocols. There's a basic principles. And we as an industry it's our job to sort of help set those protocols and principles. And we haven't done that. And it's probably largely because we don't know how to, and we don't want to, right? And I think a lot of people are just like, I kind of like doing what I'm doing. It works for me. But that's not going to change the industry.
Well, that goes back to, I haven't used this one in a while, Margaret Whelan's PMS, right? The pale, male, and stale, as she used to like to say. When the money's flowing and people are making money, why change, right? Why do I want to disrupt what I already control and what I already own? But now that we have the trade labor issues coming into play, right? We have more people staying at home than wanting to come to work, in a manufacturing or construction environment. I believe, wholeheartedly that, the change is on us now. And this is going to lead us into 2021 conversation once we get through a few more questions and answers from our audience. But, what is 2021 going to look like? And has COVID, like we talked about earlier, Colby, changed the landscape for the better for construction and offsite construction overall? because now people have taken a lot more time to take a look at what's happening. Even Housing Innovation Alliance, right, Dennis? Like with the BIM roadmap and how is it affecting what we're doing and where we're going as an industry, whether you are a production builder, whether you are a tried and true modular builder or a panelized builder or just a mom and pop home builder, right? I think all of these things are going to come into play as far as what the new digital disruption is going to be and how it comes into play. But I know I'm talking circles a little bit on this. I think the time's on us. I think it's going to happen. The question is it legacy builders or is it new players?
Yeah, I was kind of curious, Colby. You had mentioned something there about, we're kind of almost at this tipping point. What do you think it is to take? What is it going to take to push us across that line? What has to happen? I mean, can the supply demand gap get even worse? Yeah. To Dave's point about the market dynamics and labor. I mean, what is it from your perspective as you're working on some of the biggest initiatives in the space?
I mean, I sound like a broken record here, but I think the big change is going to be leadership from within our industry, who is willing to sort of put aside their selfish sort of business operations and look at the industry and start to share with their competitors ideas and solutions to get out of this sort of rut that we're in. We're in a cycle. I mean, and this is and I'm not just talking about the business cycle and the real estate cycle. I'm talking about hiring and firing every time the market turns south, and using toothpicks, to stick frame with hammers and nails buildings. There is a better way, and that better way has got to have some honest discussion. I think another thing is we need better tools to make better decisions on a global scale, right? Better decisions about how we can, as an industry, benefit society the best. Be the best societal partner we can be in building all these buildings without destroying, our natural resources and polluting. So we don't have those tools. We don't have the data and the information yet. And, one project I'm hoping gets funded is a way for us on a global scale to sort of measure the resource and societal and environmental impacts of different building methodologies. So offsite, you've got the panel in the volumetric worlds. How do they look as far as efficiency and the ability to sort of be a good steward of the environment versus the stick built world? And then do something that's taboo and go concrete versus steel versus wood, and really come to a consensus of, because there isn't one answer, but we do have to make better industry decisions that are impacting everybody. And until we are, like I say, go back to collaborate and take the leadership position that's going to require, I think we're just going to continue to kind of stick our head in the sand and act like, eventually, it'll get better again and we'll go through another cycle and we'll just keep doing this wash and rinse, repeat over and over.
Well, it doesn't come down, and Dennis, we talked about this at one point, and then I want to get back to a few more comments because I know people have been waiting. It's almost an hour. Culture, right? There's a culture shift that needs to happen in our industry, and that cultural shift, and we just talked about it with Eric Holtz not too long ago on the show, on how we think as builders. It's not that builders don't want to be better at what they do; they don't know how to be better. There's no standardized training. Hell, in Connecticut, I think it's $110. You can be a general contractor and go build houses. You don't have to train. You don't have to do anything. And then the old school way of doing things, it's better build. Hey, this house has been here for 120 years. It's still standing. It's good. This is just the mentality of thinking in our world. So there's a cultural change that needs to happen. There's an educational change that needs to happen. And I think that's starting to happen with what's happening with the youth today, because as you mentioned, sustainability is a much larger topic today than it has ever been, which opens the door for offsite construction and that conversation in a bigger way.
Yeah, I think, based off the conversations we've had within the community, we have a number of working groups actually going on this topic right now. We're looking at what's that change management process as you go from on-site to off-site. Who owns it? What are the questions you need to be asking? How do you price it? I mean, this is the biggest one that keeps coming up, and this is something I'm sure Colby could speak volumes about. But the latest McKinsey report, the next normal in construction, did a great job of outlining some of the key things we need to address. What it didn't talk about is how we go from where we are today and cross that chasm into tomorrow, and in pricing the new process, and truly understanding the implications it has on the business. So I think that from a culture, so you need that mind shift, and the culture has to be one that embraces research and development. Right. And that's hard in an industry that's typically risk averse and operates at times on razor thin margins. It goes back to that paradox you described, Dave. When things are great, we're too busy. And when things are slow, we don't have enough money to do it. So it's you have to kind of have this sustained commitment. And that's what we see by a lot of the members of our community, especially some of the ones that spoke at our last summit that have been successful in this, is that you have to take a long-term view. And through that long-term view, you're willing to make a few mistakes and fail forward. And there's this great article I was reading out of an MBA magazine over the weekend, and it's like you can actually tell if someone's going to be successful or not 5 years down the road based on how they handle their failures. So just by what happens by the next failure, you can see if they're making incremental wins or if they're just constantly hitting the same threshold, right? And I think that's something that we need to be more comfortable with. I believe in the industry itself, we hit that ceiling and we constantly are willing to just kind of back off because there's all these other barriers that get into the way from both the regulatory perspective and then a supply chain side of things, just at the top two items I mentioned. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up with that conversation on how we move forward. Let's get through these other questions real quick. Some people are in comments that people put in. Hey, we got Jordy out there, Jordy Pushinger. I don't know if you guys know Jordy, but morning all. Good to see you, Jordy. Tim Sims, collaboration over competition. Sign me up. Always love Tim. Tim's, hey, he's a member of the Housing Innovation Alliance. All right, we got Henry Mickelberg all the way from France. What methodology do you use to time and motion study your humans? Simon, for example, for digital twin comparison. Which one of you wants to take that on?
I can pick that one up, Dennis, if you want to take that too. So, I mean, this is the right now what we're doing, Henry, is we're looking at computer vision as a way to track activity, people, and what they're doing, and number of hours or minutes they're spending at that activity. The tech isn't quite there yet. The old school method, if everybody knows time and motion studies, you stand there with a stopwatch and you write down what the person's doing and when they start it and when they stop it. It's very expensive. It takes a very long time to do, and you get sort of like a static data point. Whereas computer vision is just simply teaching the computer what it's looking at, and then it can look for that pattern and then start to timestamp it and even track where the person's going. Wearables is another technology that's going to help do this, where we can track not just where the person is on the factory floor, but the exertion that they're putting on themselves. So bending and twisting, things like that. So there's a lot of tech. We just have to start to apply it. And that is exactly what we want to do with these digital twins, is that we want to take real-time data from the factory floor and constantly update the digital twin. So it's not just a one-time thing, but you're constantly, and this goes back to that point I was making earlier, we need to make better decisions off better data. We need to have better tools. And if you have a tool that's just like a one-off thing that, great, it's good for 2020. What about 2021 when you decide to do something different or things change? So we need that real-time data flow.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, somebody who's doing this that you just talked about as far as following the human side of this is Oracle. They have their whole construction lab up in Chicago, and literally wearing the suits, somebody falls or what have you, a human doesn't go. They have drones on site that can take off and do a live visual what's happening at that very point in time. So on big commercial jobs, pipeline jobs, jobs that are out in the ocean or what have you, they're looking at this from a very commercial structure and real-time movement, and what they're doing, how they're lifting, to be more efficient on everything that they're doing. And that's just another name people probably don't know, but Oracle is in our space as well now.
Yeah, we need more of those guys to be a little more vocal about they are in the space, so that we know we can reach out to them and say, hey, did you know that Oregon State University is building a digital twin of a modular factory, and they're trying to solve this problem of how to track people and MIT's got their project going on, and Carnegie Mellon's got their project going on. Everybody's got these silos. I mean, we're doing our research just like we run our industry. We're all siloed. And so how do we break through that? And how do we share that knowledge in those projects that are really good, efforts, but how much better they could be if we were to collaborate more.
That's right. Well, they should all join Dave Cooper Live in the Housing Innovation Alliance, right? Because so we can collaborate and talk. And the MMC, if you're in modular and volumetric, but that's kind of starting to happen already, right? I mean, so Dennis, what are your 2 cents on that?
2 cents on what specific question, Dave? Sorry.
Methodology for, what the digital twin comparison is for motion study and humans, things of that nature. Do you have anybody in the Housing Innovation Alliance doing any of that?
We have a few builders that are. It's not something that I'm deeply aware of or familiar with, so I can't really speak. Other than what Colby's added to this, I think that's pretty well covered there.
Yeah. Well, James Hardy, as an example, when I was building modular, they had people come to our site, they'd hook them up with GoPros, and they would monitor how they're operating and what they're doing. They have a program to make the siding installation more efficient. So there are companies looking at the data. Everybody looks at the data in every other industry. We need to study the data in this industry. It's not a matter of walking into a house and say, well, there's a moisture issue, ... Here's how we fix it. It's more of, we have a moisture issue. What's the data? What's causing it? How do we prevent it from the future? And what are the health consequences of that happening, right? So it's looking at it differently versus let's put the Band-Aid on and stop the water. So
there's a post-processing of the data that has to happen that we have not done a good job at. And you can go collect the camera video of a job being built or a factory running, but then somebody's got to sit down and watch the video. And so that's where that's that computer vision that I was talking about, where you can train the computer to sort of look for things, and then now it's doing that processing in real time rather than you having to, go watch a video that got 12 hours ahead of you staring at something. So
so the industry needs our own IBM Watson.
Yeah, I mean, and Watson's out there, but Watson's. I'd love to see where that project is. I know Steve Byers in Denver was working on that for a while. I should circle back with Steve and find out where that landed. But Oracle, Google, that's the future. If we want to talk about 2021, is about data and mining data. And of course, there's sort of the social impact thing of selling that data, which is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about mining it for the purposes of improving the industry and doing things better and making better decisions. We have to do better at mining and analyzing our own industry data.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to speed round through these last questions. Colby's answer 2021 is we're going to need to look at the data and be more efficient at looking at the data and analyzing the data and then taking that data and doing something with it. Right? That's the big thing. You can look at all the data in the world you want if you don't react and pull something together to make that data work better for the industry. So let's speed round through these last questions. Dennis and Colby, they're up to both of you to answer. Colby, and I'm going to say Dennis here, if you could build your dream team of collaboration, who would be on it? Who are the players or verticals within the industry you think should come together and drive the innovation needed? Just curious. And Jordy says, Jennifer Cooper. I like that question. Who wants it? That can be either or.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, I think it's a difficult question to answer, right? Because you have to look at the specific problem that's going to be solved. It's not how you say, it's like offsite construction. Not all projects deserve modular. Some deserve 2D. So I think that there's an opportunity to look at a strong cross section of practitioners and theorists that can apply different sets of challenges to any of the opportunities in front of you. So if I had to pick, I'd say, give me someone who understands the digital side of things. And I'm talking about, to Colby's point, you want to have end-to-end sight from delivery, from design through delivery on the data piece of this. And I'd want someone who's been in the field doing it the old way, but willing to try it the new way all around, and then bring their ecosystem of forward-thinking players together. Obviously, the regulatory side needs to be as involved as you possibly can, because they're the ones who are going to have to accept and understand the educational component of what's going on here. But I think, if I look at what we've done through the Housing Innovation Alliance, we started out with the big building product manufacturers. We started out with the biggest production builders, and then we built a network around them that allowed us to continue to experiment and rapid fire in the industry with different solution sets. And I think ultimately what we're going to come out with is who are the right stakeholders to engage around a technology solution mix that works for our market. I don't think there's any one answer when it comes to methods of construction, right? I think that you have to look at a portfolio of solutions that are going to be based off any given year's market dynamics, as well as the geography and the building materials that are available to you, as well as the labor supply. So I think making sure you have a set of forward-thinking individuals around you that are willing to kind of break down those barriers that sit in front of us today, I think you're all right.
Awesome. Love it. All right, moving on. Hey, you know this person, Colby. Heather Wallace, Washington State for a new CLT plant coming soon. We were talking about CLT earlier and what plants are coming up. Tim Sims from John Burns wanted to get out and see some. So Heather just giving a little inside knowledge. All right, Joel's back. Let's go through this. Do you think the venture capital injected into the industry has been beneficial or detrimental? Colby, you take that one. Go.
100% beneficial, no doubt. I think, could it be spent more wisely, and could we get, further with our dollar spend? That's up for the investor to make that decision. But it is like doing a lot of little mini backyard experiments that are happening all over the industry now, coming from different pots of money with different end goals. There's nothing but good that comes out of that. Now, certainly we're going to have some skeletons, and we're going to have some dead bodies. But the more we can experiment as an industry and learn from it, again, this is kind of back to a point we made earlier about actually capturing the knowledge in our industry and transferable and making it transferred to the next generation or to the next line worker or to the next tradesperson. We've got to get better at capturing and transferring and then learning from that. And we just don't seem to really want to at this point. So I think the more money they bring, the more outside perspective they bring. And that's only healthy for us right now.
Yeah. And there's definitely some change coming. I don't know if either of you saw the show that we had on with Archistar out of Australia, and what they are doing with their digital mapping and finding properties. And then it automatically generates, thousands of different models that can fit on a property, tell you where the sun's at, shadowing. There's things happening. So if you haven't seen that show, you definitely want to see the show we did with Archistar not too long ago, because it is a prime example of how you can take data and use it in our industry to speed up, finding where you want to go, what you want to build, how you're going to build it. And then it takes it and renders it out and then places it on the site in real size around all the Google Earth buildings. It's the most amazing thing. So check it out, fellas, if you haven't seen it. All right, kind of keep moving here. Time is a ticking. Time is money, they say. All right, here we go. We got George Ryman from Shorefoot Foundations, Phoenix, Arizona. What is happening, George? Thank you for joining us. We got Dwayne C. Barney, residential construction business. Excellent discussion. And one of my favorites, Harris Woodward Finish Works. Speaking of a shortage of folks not wanting to wear a tool belt, we are suffering a huge shortfall of set crews here in Maryland and around the East Coast. Major problem for custom modular homes. Yeah. Right. Hey, listen, setting buildings and houses is not easy work. It's hard work. It's long days and you're on the road.
But talk about an opportunity. I mean, the modular industry is going to grow. So we need more people who understand how to work with those technologies. And so it's nothing but, up. It's just, how do we work to get, how do we bring people into this fold and say, look, here's what we're going to do to drive the industry. All you got to do is learn how to do this work so that the industry can actually be driven and work and be successful. We need set crews. We need finish crews. We need people on the factory floor. I mean, we're having the same problem with labor. That does not go away in 2021.
Nope.
Labor is going to continue to be a problem. But honestly, in 2021, I think most companies are going to be focused on financial security and probably managing risk in the supply chain, less so about productivity right now, because they're just going to be trying to stay alive.
Yeah, for sure. Lost Dennis there. It looks like, hold on one second. He'll be back with us in a minute, he said. Family, gotta love working from home. All right, let's fly through. So we have Henry Mickelberg has a follow-up. Sounds like the U.S. is a few years behind Europe as far as proving key driver benefit metrics against MMC choice and tech options. Get in touch and we can save you a few years. Right. So he's talking modern methods of construction over there. Right. That's what they call what they're doing. And in the UK and what Henry has been involved with a lot of those people for a long time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I hope people are reaching out to Henry. Henry was on the show not too long ago, and he's a leader as far as thought goes in this industry. And if you don't know Henry, you should. That's what I say. You know Henry Mickelberg, Colby?
I don't, but like the question about, I do now, the question about who would you put on the team, right? Who would be part of this collaboration? Yeah. You know, it's global. Right. We need global participants. Right. We need policy participants. You know, we need tech participants. We need manufacturing participants. We need all of these people. And if we did do that, it would be an unbelievable like leap that we could make. But, you know, how do we find the time and the headspace and the money to resource that? That's the trick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to jump to one here real quick, just because I don't ever see this guy on the show. And I'm excited. Mod coach Gary Fleischer decided to show up today. What is happening, Gary? Humans are not stupid. They just need to know why they are important to the process instead of being put below management. Awesome. So if you guys don't know Gary Fleischer, you do now. Gary is the mod coach, and he's been in this industry for a long time and has the largest blog in the modular construction world. I think it's in the world, right, Gary? Don't you have millions of views each post or something? Welcome.
Yeah, Gary's spot on there, man. We've got I think Elon Musk said it. He said, look, humans are underrated. You know, it's not like we can just automate our way out of this problem. You know, we talked about cultural issues. Those are human issues, and people wanting to be able to pay their bills and have a good, honest job. And sort of engage them, right? Like bring them into the process and make them part of how do we get out of this mess, guys. I think there's a lot to be learned out of what Gary just said there.
Yeah. Another t-shirt. How do we get out of this mess? That's perfect for construction, right? Love it. Hey, so Jordy says Moducore is integrated with IBM Watson. How about that?
Cool.
I would have known. Jordy, we're not talking enough, man. What's up with that? I should have known that.
And what is IBM Watson? I mean, what are they doing? Like, how is it flowing back to, you know, the industry and making the industry better? I just don't know. I'd love to know more.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you there. Jordy and Moducore has been doing great things. So love it. All right, here we go. Tim Sims wrote a long one, Colby, and then we're going to wrap up here in just two more comments. If you put another comment in after this, we'll answer it after the show here. What Dennis brings up is important. Like a lot of consultancies, McKinsey does a great job of identifying the problems, but they haven't taken the lead on how to specifically connect the community and execute going forward. You all have done more in the last year in that respect than they have done in 5 years. Looking forward to working more on this with all of you. Hey, very cool, Tim. Tim, again, big proponent for our industry. Has his own podcast as well, which is great. So if you don't know Tim Sims, please check him out right now and follow him. All right, moving on. Joe Butler, thank you for the learnings. Keep up the great work. Hey, Bob Bender, good conversation today. Well, guess who's on the show tomorrow?
Bob.
I'll give you that's a good guess.
Hey, yeah. I'll listen to that one. I want to hear what Bob's got to say. Bob's one of those, invisible leaders behind the scene that are doing things to change things. Those influencers, Vaughn Buckley is one of those guys, like Dennis, yourself. There's a lot of people moving things and trying to work together, and it's just hard to find the headspace and the time to do this. Your son, you get him taken care of, Dennis? I know he can.
I made it November 14th without a Zoom bomb, and I'll tell you what, here it is.
Did the whole green screen come down, and he was running around naked after the bath? That's what happens in my world.
Yeah, the green screen was about to come down. That's how I knew he was here.
Love it. Hey, that's all right. Yeah. We're all working from home, and you know what? That's the fun part of working from home is because you know what? Now everybody goes back to listen. This is life. It just is what it is. We have families. We have things going on. Get over it. We're all dealing with it. So pretending like it's not happening doesn't work either. All right, Bob. We will see you on the show tomorrow. Right. Moving on. So Jordy said, we need humans. Tesla is a great example, over automated and reverted back to human capital to reach profit. So perfect. And Gary Fleischer says, great show, guys. It has been a good show. Hey, listen, we still have a ton of people watching us and we have a lot going on, but we are 20 minutes over what our normal is. And Colby and I originally were only doing this for 30 minutes. Dennis didn't know if he was going to be able to get out of a meeting to jump in. So I'm glad, Dennis, you were able to join us. So why don't we wrap this up with what 2021 looks like moving forward? What do you guys think is going to happen? Because everything's going to slow down between now and the holidays a little bit. What people are doing, what they're talking about. Not us, not Dave Cooper Live. We're going to use this opportunity to bring more people to you as we do this once I get through my move. All right, Dennis, why don't you talk to us about 2021 and move us on through the show?
Yeah, sure. So I think what I'll hit on is one of the two things that interests me the most about where we're going as an industry. So one, I think I want to talk more about home as a service and the role that's going to play in the production builder and all builders' lives. I think that this is a great opportunity for a recurring revenue model, building a customer for life, and an opportunity to expand a portfolio of offerings that, through subscriptions that we as consumers already seem to love through every other aspect of our commerce. So I think that's one area I'm really excited about. The other area is if we think about offsite construction and combine that with the build for rent market boom, I think that there's a huge opportunity to see an acceleration of the adoption of innovation through that market segment, which will have spillover effects into the single family for sale market opportunity. And I'd love to get Colby and your thoughts, Dave, on this particular subject. But I think that the expectation of the capital flowing into these projects, the ability to concentrate developers and contractors in certain markets and leverage long-term investments in offsite construction will play a very big role in kind of the emergence of more technologies for this use. I think also the fact that you can get it up and running much faster, shorten the risk premium on the cycle time of the project, allows you also to kind of increase interest in this. So those are two areas that I think we're going to see a lot more opportunity in. So both from the customer experience and overall feedback loop for innovation on the home as a service. And then if we look at the business model side of what build for rent can do for the industry and how that could be a tipping point for single family for sale product, I think that's interesting as well.
Great. Colby?
Man, just a couple of thoughts. Like, let's learn from this chaos of 2020. Let's really reflect on what it sort of opened up and opened our eyes to, because I think there's a lot of learning in this. I think another thing for me would be we have to make offsite easier for the people who want to buy it, the real estate. And if we can focus on 2021, really thinking about how do we make it easier to get into our industry, whether it's to build with it or to be a technology player in it. Obviously we've got some traction. Let's build on that.
Yeah.
I think I say it again, just keep doubling down on collaboration, double down on technology. And, just as a side note, we've got to strengthen our supply chain. I mean, boy, did that open up a lot of holes. Right now people are waiting months to get windows, and insulation was on allocation, and all this stuff was just really crippling a lot of companies. And I think we, again, one of those lessons that we learned from this year, how do we not let that happen next time?
Yeah. So I agree with both of you 100% on all fronts. I think this home as a service, Dennis, is really a true thing. And that's how people are starting to look at their houses, especially as they spend more time in their homes. And as builders and developers are looking at what they're offering as far as solutions to the consumer or the end buyer, I think is going to be more and more valuable moving forward and what people want. And I think that comes from a younger buyer that's moving up in the buying process, as far as being able to afford these things. As far as 2021 is concerned, Colby, I think so as well. I think the collaboration, there is more conversation going on today in our industry than ever. I mean, Dennis, you got your coffee talks at Housing Innovation Alliance. We're doing this live show this year, and there's several other people. You got Tim Sims that's tuned in here. But there's a lot of people that are now driving this conversation forward. And I think that's going to be the key to the future. The other thing that's happening, and maybe you guys know this or not, we just had a big meeting with all the associate members on their board at the NAHB. We were able to sit down and answer their questions and talk to them about what is offsite. How do they get involved in offsite? This is a big, big opportunity coming into 2021 to have the raw material suppliers and the suppliers get involved, start looking at it, start understanding what it's about. They have money, they have innovation, they have their own resources, developing new products and things that they're doing. So I think 2021 is going to be a real turning point. I do not personally feel that we're going to step back in time or hit that ceiling, as you mentioned before, Dennis, where we go, it's too hard. Let's just stick with what we know and keep it moving and simple. I think we're going to go past the ceiling in 2021. From my conversations globally that are happening, there are a lot of young people like Archistar and some of these other people that are just completely going to blow it out of the water in some areas that are going to make the rest of us really take a look at it and say, well, that's pretty cool. Let's start looking at this, because I think people are going to flock to it. So I think it's the collaboration. I think it's the innovation. And I think it's the next generation of developers and builders and innovators that are going to force the old tried and true legacy to take a hard look at what we're doing. And that's going to happen in 2021, no doubt. I hope.
Yeah. Well, I think to add to that too, so there was a point that came up earlier where they talked about venture capital funding, and I think the investment in prop tech has been growing exponentially year over year, right? But what we're starting to see more and more of is in the construction tech side of things, which I think is one of those. Again, it's a long cycle, a lot of risk, capital intensive. But once we start getting more and more players comfortable with the opportunities that exist there, and the next generation and a more diverse generation coming in, and saying this is how we're going to look and do things differently, I think that's going to open up a whole series of opportunities that we have not yet seen unlocked.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I got one more comment, Dennis. It's for you. And I know you dropped out, so I want to put it up there real quick. SFR rental products. This is from Paul Pelicani. Modular delivery is a tough one to crack, Dennis. We met with one of the largest players in the space, and they are building SFRR homes, dirt to doorknobs, in 60 days at a real good number. Good idea, but multi-story, multifamily has been working for us more reasonably. Great show, fellas. Thank you. I think this is good, because Dennis, you're seeing a lot of this with a lot of the production builders in the Housing Innovation Alliance is tied into, with the top dozen production builders in the country. You want to give your 2 cents to Paul, and then we're going to wrap it up?
Well, I think what Paul is saying is a common answer in the marketplace, right? So I think this idea of volumetric may not be the answer today. But there are combination or hybrid kits where you're getting 2D assemblies. You're doing wall panels, floor cassettes, roof trusses, and you're combining that with a cartridge set or a bathroom pod or kitchen pod, if you will. So I think there are ways that offsite construction is adding value to the build to rent market and can continue to add value, which will ultimately lead towards the exploration of other more comprehensive solutions or more complete offsite packages. But today, most of what we're seeing in the offsite adoption there is going to be on the 2D side, as we're calling it.
For sure. All right, cool. That's it, man. I mean, that's an hour and 25 minutes, 26 minutes longer than anybody else thought we'd be here. We had a large following today. A lot of people tuned in to hear what you both had to say. Dennis, thank you for joining us. Colby, thank you for joining us and taking time out of both your all schedules. And everybody else, please hit that like and share button. If you are not following Colby and Dennis and myself, please follow us, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can watch all the past episodes right there at davecooper.live, because we are bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include building systems to building science to building codes to the tech used to build it better. And today was no different with both of our guests, Colby Swanson and Dennis Steigerwalt. Thank you guys so much. We will see everybody tomorrow at 1 o'clock on Building Modular with Bob Bender, COO of the Commodore Corporation. And that's going to be a great conversation to have, because that is one smart guy right there. And I think Colby's nodding because he knows it is. And Dennis, you know him as well, I think, right?
Know him well. Yep.
All right, everybody. So tune in 1 p.m. tomorrow with Jennifer and I as we talk with Bob Bender from the Commodore Corporation. Thanks so much, everybody. You two stick around. I'll be right back to you. Bye now.